Hello world, curses and madness be upon you all, my friends. I am Euclidean Vision, the emotional support, and today we're going to be talking about Valkyrie, the new Mercy short story that was released yesterday, written by Michael Chu. And ultimately, I have rather mixed feelings on this short story, with the only determinate thing I can really say on it being, let Alyssa Wong write more please. So, jumping into the actual story itself, Valkyrie is an incredibly lazy name for a Mercy short story. I get that the suit is representative of the idea of Mercy, like the concept itself, and Angela's supposed struggle to take up that mantle again in the story, but come on, I'm sure you can do better than that. Onto the art, which, is nice. Neskane does really nice art, but the art itself isn't that exciting, and there's not that much of it to look at, so not much really actually to say about that, to be honest. And looking at the timing of this story, this really should have come out before 0 Hour. Knowing that Mercy goes back to Overwatch anyway, and learning sort of how she came to that decision, it kind of wasn't necessary, to be honest. And the story itself suffers on top of that there's no tension, there's barely any tension anyway, but any that would have been there is totally removed, because we know the overall outcome, really, of both the events of the story and the character development that comes with it. Having seen 0 Hour, we know that Mercy goes through something that pushes her to go back to Overwatch. Learning how and how easily she jumps into it definitely doesn't feel that necessary to me. But hey, it's nice to have her fleshed out finally, I suppose. And on that note, the character writing, actually, throughout the story, largely is actually pretty solid. Jack Morrison, especially in his flashback with Mercy, particularly stands out at times when he's not falling into, a caricature in the present, unless that's kind of the point of his character, in which case, that's actually done kind of well. Angela Ziegler and Mercy, the character and the concept, the hero, the idea themselves, are both, again, really consistent throughout, and you are at least, brought into Angela's mindset quite well through her narration. And Anna's just a lovely old dear, really, she always is. And her speech about heroism and idealism towards the end is actually pretty interesting, to apply to the other characters in the story, and the story as a whole, even though the actual message feels a bit dense and, difficult to discern at first. So then on to the actual story itself, and, how it's sort of put together, and personally, it's not that strong, this one. I'm glad that something actually sort of happens this time, and it's far better paced than Bastet is. But, the actualization of Mercy getting back out in the field isn't really an actual conflict, it's barely an internal one. And what she does to, set herself on the way back to Overwatch doesn't really feel satisfying to me. She puts on her battlesuit when Anna and Soldier ask. She avoids the battle altogether. Nearly doesn't save 2 kids, and that's enough. Back to Overwatch we go. Heroes never die. Admittedly, the exploration of Angela's reluctant acceptance of the title of Mercy at first and in present is a welcome change and a nice insight into her character. And that does sort of bring us to my sort of most widely varying opinions on Valkyrie, actually, the writing style. The prose early on, how it's written, and at times towards the end, can feel really, stilted and cluttered. I had to slow my reading pace to actually find the cadence of some of these pieces at first. So I was often reminded that I was actually reading a story rather than inhabiting Mercy's mind. Like I said earlier, when you actually get in there and it's being represented well, it's actually pretty good, and you can lose yourself in Angela Ziegler's struggle, if you will. What little struggle there is. And overall, her internal monologue does really serve the purpose of outlining the story, and when it's not being difficult, like I said, it can really show off some of her character's anxieties, her beliefs, and her personally noted, doubt-ridden, somewhat sort of prickly nature. There are even some flashes of profound and emotive introspection to her as well, with certain lines taking on these nice multiple meanings to reflect the actuality of a situation and Mercy's genuine feelings on them. My favourite actually isn't the "it all still fit, but I'd forgotten just how heavy the suit was" line, which feels very Luffy vs Usopp, so I can dig that. That's a nice line. But my personal favourite comes when Jack is fiddling with a medical scanner in Mercy's apartment, and he asks her, "What are you doing here in Cairo?" And she replies, with regard to his treatment of the scanner, "That's delicate." Nice. I like that. Good little twist. Well done, Michael. More of that, please. But on from words into actual sort of substance, looking at the events of the actual story as a way to facilitate Mercy's development kind of annoys me, again, that Mercy didn't really do anything that pushed her to make the decision to go back to Overwatch and to put on the Valkyrie suit and become Mercy again. She helped 2 kids, as she would have been sort of wont to do anyway, but nearly failed and then was saved by the daddy ex machina. She didn't even really seem to overcome anything, like, even within herself, really. Like, her decision to go out into the field came from the seemingly already existing drive within her, despite the interesting relationship she has with Cairo's people, and again, the idea of Mercy itself. Rediscovering her heroism just sort of happened way too fast to me. She was told she was needed, and she was like, oh, I should really help the kids. Oh, but no, I'm putting on the fucking suit. And nothing really came of it, because she'd already sort of decided on that path. So the already presented sort of crisis of belief was sort of washed away instantly, like as if she'd already dealt with the problems internally, really, but just needed an excuse to represent them externally. And, you know, Talon attacking the Anubis facility is enough for that. Like, yeah, the kids wouldn't have survived without her, so there is some kind of, like, actualization of her goal there, but they also wouldn't have survived without Jacaranda either. So most everything that happens in the story was more so dictated by situation rather than character growth or difficult decisions or like a change, if you will. Even though, yes, she does put the suit back on, but it's as if she already kind of wanted to in the first place, even though she doesn't like the idea. Yeah, it feels a bit muddy, sort of like I said about the heroism idealism speech given by Anna at the end. There's these two kind of starkly supposedly different ideas that are actually really similar. Yeah, it boggles my mind a little. So we'll move on to something maybe like a little easier, like some of the world building and the lore. Like Mercy's backstory with Overwatch, pretty good. Like, it tells us little beyond what we already knew. It develops her more in terms of like character, like just solidifying that sort of prickly nature she brings up. It's cool that she aimed to essentially use Overwatch for her own ends ultimately though, and the representation of her idealism and her concerns about Overwatch's place in the world are nicely consistent with what we already know today. So yeah, that's just helping flesh her out, that's fine. But then jumping a bit more to the present, Mercy being in Cairo itself is just sort of a little convenient, like, for the story. It's quite clearly for the story, given everything else we've been shown placed her in the Middle East. Doesn't really matter. It's just like either a little bit too inconsistent or a bit, like I say, too obviously conveniently done for the purposes of the story, which, fine, doesn't matter really. Cairo itself though, its circumstances and how Overwatch's legacy there sort of has affected that is still kind of unexplained after the multiple references that we have had. It suggests that Overwatch sort of caused the problem while it existed as an organization, like, you know, the decade of strife they caused, theoretically, but it's also possibly Overwatch's downfall is what's caused Cairo's more sort of crime-related problems, and yeah, that's not very clear, and the story keeps talking about it as if we understand. Like, I mean, we get it, Cairo's got problems, but it talks about it almost as if we understand why, which, yeah, we obviously don't yet, and we're going to learn about that at some point. But when it's so regularly brought up as if it's something that they don't need to discuss, it's just a little annoying to me, personally. Again, doesn't really matter, just a little bit of a personal gripe, if you will. And assumedly, something that must be part of that Overwatch legacy Cairo problem, Anubis, like, Anubis being attacked by Talon, finally, like, kind of really goes against the statements about its nature that, oh no, God programs aren't, higher classes of AI, what do you mean? Like, do you know, it makes it very clear that Anubis definitely, well, we already knew that Anubis was a very clearly higher class of AI, that should be obvious to anyone, but Talon are now proving, after all the times they've mentioned, oh yeah, we kind of want that thing, they're going for it, cool. But maybe again, develop on why, like, my best guess is it's sort of the crux of what helps cause Overwatch 2 and the whole null sector invasion thing, especially as in the Overwatch 2 gameplay, we hear the characters referred to the Omnics as robots, like, all the time, which suggests more that they're actual robots without self-actualization and sapience, and yeah, weird. Maybe expand on Anubis, or they're going to soon, which I would like to see, but way to sort of try and downplay it back over time it's very clear that Anubis is actually kind of important, and I'd rather that they kind of developed on why, rather than just giving us several instances of, yeah, we want that. Do you know? So, and speaking of the Anubis bit, like, Anna basically fighting alongside Helix Sakuri at the Temple of Anubis, and you don't feature Farah at all. Not even, like, a glimpse, not even a look, not a healing dart shot across a smoky battlefield. Do you know, like, missed opportunity there, guys. Like, and also, based on the end of What You Left Behind, where's Baptista? Especially as Mercy's already gone in the present to Paris. Baptiste heading for the Middle East to find her is going nowhere. Like, is that going to be explained at all? I don't know. And again, it sort of doesn't matter. Bit of a missed opportunity. Bit of a dangling plot thread that this would have been the place you'd think you'd resolve it, and now it's still just dangling. Never mind, I guess. Another little thing that's personally just sort of a gripe. The bit about Mercy trying to explain how her healing works, and the whole, is it little machines? Like, that's way too clearly a reference at the fandom that makes little sense in world. Like, if a child could have understood it, like, and explained it in that short length of time, why not just explain it? Or, why did she expect a child to understand it? It seems that she could have. The way that Mercy thinks about it, so it can't be that complex, can it? Or is she, like, that removed from reality due to anxieties about her past, and how Mercy relates to Cairo and the greater world and Overwatch, that she does feel that a child would have heard of the relatively new and actually not that widespread scientific field in antibiotics due to the fall of Overwatch, and she'd totally be able to understand it. Yeah, like, are we actually getting a bit of insight that Mercy's a bit sort of removed from reality there? That'd be kind of interesting, but no, it just kind of seems, especially as, how does a beam of light suggest nanomachines to a child? Like, how does a child know what nanomachines are anyway? Like, the whole bit is way too obviously, like, knowing, and like a, wink wink nudge nudge at the audience, that it just feels really, like, out of tone with the rest of proceedings as it is. Like, it makes that whole bit feel stilted and, like, clunkily paced. Like, the whole bit with Hanan and her brother is nice for showing off Mercy's character, her place in the world, how everything relates back to her. Like, my parents don't like you. Oh, I hope you put a good word in for me then. Nice bit of character development. But the whole bit can kind of also feel like way too much of a tonal shift at parts when she's dived out of, like, a war zone into, do you know how my healing works? Oh no, it's not little machines, and I'm disappointed that you think it's little machines. Like, fuck off. So, looking back over the story as a whole, the Dr. Ziegler Mercy theme was pretty interesting, actually, if a little familiar, and it's more so interesting due to her attitude, actually, rather than the circumstance, which is really good compared to how some of the rest of the story is written. Jack and Anna embodying Overwatch in Mercy's eyes is also, like, a really interesting theme to play with, them representing it both in its prime and in what it sort of became, and how they threaten to really mirror that in Mercy's eyes. The final theme, again, sort of regarding heroism and idealism that I brought up at the beginning, like I said, it feels a little muddy to me, or that it sort of contradicts itself in ways, or that it's pointing out that Jack and Anna are only really heroes because they need to be, and that's the sacrifice you make in idealism when you take up heroism. But at least Anna kind of suggests that Mercy and the younger generation aren't exactly confined by this, or that they will achieve greater things because they stick to their idealism, and maybe points out that while she and Jack have chosen their path, Mercy still has the potential to at least become the sort of hero that she actually wants to be, which I suppose is what the story is all about, which is kind of nice, and it confirms that, yeah, she's definitely going back to Overwatch, despite her concerns with both its past and present iterations. That being said, all their sort of character views on Winston and the new Overwatch are some of the most realistic and diverse shown thus far too, like, again relating back to that concept of idealism and unveiling more of Winston's personal attachment to Overwatch itself as well as its ideology. So yeah, ultimately, Valkyrie is fine. Personally, it could not even have been released and nothing would really have changed, but I'm glad it was expanded on how Mercy decided to come back, and that she's finally gotten her own piece of actual lore and story to work with. And in terms of her character fleshing out, like, there's a lot more character development in this story than there is character growth. That at least is definitely worth it. The story that facilitated that development personally could have been better. I think that's my gripe, I suppose. Several things in terms of its intertextuality, like I've mentioned, how it relates to 0 Hour. Like, it really should have been released before 0 Hour, do you know? Like, learning it after the fact just sort of removes a lot of the investment that I could have had with the story, and seeing it before 0 Hour wouldn't really have ruined anything that happens in 0 Hour. Her turning up just would have been like, I understand why she turns up now. Fine. Like, nothing changed. I didn't really care when she turned up in the first place, because 0 Hour is much better than Valkyrie. I didn't care that she just turned up, because it was nice to have her there. So, there are also just like these several nagging elements of the world building that I feel really could have been expanded upon, or really need to be expanded upon at some point, as opposed to just being repeatedly stated as truth or kind of glossed over. So that ultimately is my thoughts on Valkyrie. In terms of a score, I give it 1 broken wing out of 2. So it's alright. Like, if you're a Mercy fan, I'm sure you will actually quite enjoy this. And yeah, it's probably better for her character than for any kind of other storytelling. So, I hope you've enjoyed my thoughts. I hope you enjoyed Valkyrie in the first place, to be honest. As much as I've sort of ragged on it, I'm not hating on it in any real way. I just kind of wish it could be better. Or that Alyssa Wong had written it. But thanks again, friends. I've been Euclidean Vision, the emotional support. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy my ridiculous Overwatch nonsense. And check back soon for some videos on Overwatch 2's talent trees. Take care of yourselves, teammates, and may the glorious light of Best Girl shine within you. Bye-bye.